from studios at USF Tampa and USF Sarasota Manatee.
The Central Park Performing Arts Center in Largo presents a true luminary of American music, Grammy-nominated Susie Boggess, this Friday evening. She's had multiple top 10 hits and continues to tour in America and internationally. Tickets at largoarts.com. Support for the Zest podcast comes from WUSF members and Adelaide Interiors, a full-service design partner. Their new showroom on Kennedy Boulevard in Tampa showcases the latest styles in kitchen, bath, furniture, and interior design. And they offer hands-on cooking sessions. Details at adelaide.com. Because of the generosity of Neil Frankel, you are hearing WUSF and its award-winning local journalism from the doctors Lorraine Rubis and Neil Frankel Studio. Thank you, Neil, for supporting the information that connects our community.
The state of Florida could soon have the power to designate groups as domestic terrorist organizations. Harsh consequences await schools and students deemed to be associated with such groups, including expulsion, loss of funding. I'm Matthew Petty, and coming up on Florida Matters Live and Local, we'll talk about why supporters think this will make our state safer and why others say it infringes on our basic rights. You can join the conversation too. Give us a call at 813-755-6562 or send us an email, floridamatters@wusf.org. Also this hour, voting rights. Federal lawmakers are debating a voting overhaul. Meanwhile, Florida's already passed its own version of the SAVE Act, requiring proof of citizenship to vote. Is this the right way to safeguard our elections? Also meet some Tampa Bay locals fresh off a line worker rodeo, and the Boys and Girls Club of Tampa Bay celebrates its 100th birthday. Talk about all this and take your calls and emails after these headlines.
Live from NPR News in New York City, I'm Dwalisa Kautal. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth isn't denying the Pentagon is asking Congress for an additional $200 billion for U.S. military effort in Iran. The comments follow overnight Iranian counterattacks on a major oil field in Qatar. NPR's Quill Lawrence reports.
Hegseth and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, began a news conference by paying tribute to the 6 servicemen and women who died last week when 2 Air Force refueling tankers collided. Hegseth went on to attack the media for negative reporting on the war against Iran, where Hegseth said the U.S. military continues to face only minor resistance as it systematically destroys Iran's Navy, Air Force, and missile production capability. Hegseth did not dispute reporting that the Pentagon has asked Congress for roughly $200 billion, saying it was needed to replenish missiles and the expensive interceptors the U.S. and allies are using to intercept Iran's comparatively cheap drone weapons. Quill Lawrence, NPR News.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told Fox Business about the U.S. strategy to stabilize the global economy during Operation Epic Fury as it relates to SPR, Strategic Petroleum Reserve.
The largest coordinated SPR release in history, 400 million barrels, was approved last week, and some countries are going to do more. The U.S. could unilaterally do another SPR release to keep the price down.
Benchmark crude oil prices surpassed $119 a barrel before pulling back. This follows attacks on a major gas complex in Qatar and other oil and gas refineries in the region. The Federal Bureau of Investigations may be purchasing commercially available data that can be used to track Americans' location. As NPR's Jude Joffe-Block reports, that came out in a Senate intelligence hearing today.
Back in 2023, then FBI Director Chris Wray told Congress the FBI was no longer purchasing commercial databases that include location data from internet advertising. At this hearing, Democratic Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon asked current FBI Director Kash Patel if he could also commit to not purchasing Americans' location data. Patel did not.
We do purchase commercially available information that's consistent with the Constitution and the laws under the Electronic Communications Privacy Act.
Wyden says data purchases without a warrant are an end run around the Fourth Amendment, and that's compounded by the potential to use AI to comb through private information. A spokesperson for the FBI declined to comment or clarify what data the FBI is buying. Jude Joffe-Block, NPR News.
The World Happiness Report is out, and it shows Finland remains the happiest land in the world, followed by other Nordic countries and Costa Rica in the top 5. You're listening to NPR from New York.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, home of the Name Your Price tool, so drivers can see coverage options at Progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Price and coverage match limited by state law. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
You're listening to WUSF 89.7. I'm Craig Kopp. Proposed school closures in Hillsborough County are worrying parents and teachers. About 50 people gathered in Rotary Riverfront Park to talk about their concerns on Wednesday. Stephanie Walker is a parent to 2 children attending Pizzo K-8. That school sits on the USF campus, but could be forced out because of an extreme rent hike.
It feels like they don't care. It feels like they're not even trying to think about the actual future.
If Pizzo closes, students will be reassigned to several nearby schools. The same could happen to older students at Sulphur Springs K-8, which plans to close its middle school. Parent Joanne Cade says she's worried some families are going to struggle with transportation.
It makes me feel less than because we're just a number.
Cade says the change could also negatively impact students' studies. Florida citrus growers are doubling domestic fresh fruit marketing as the industry works to recover from destructive winter freezes. Most of Florida's orange production is processed into juice, but growers hope to shift some of their produce into the more lucrative fresh fruit market. The move comes as growers try to recover from January freezes that caused an estimated $675 million in losses to fruit and trees. Florida Citrus Mutual CEO Matt Joyner says the industry had been seeing signs of improvement prior to those cold snaps.
Sans the weather events that we can really do not a whole lot about, we are seeing tremendous gains in production and quality from the therapies that have been developed, as well as some of these newer varieties.
A Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services report says the industry faces an average productivity loss of 27% a year. The USF men's basketball team plays in the NCAA tournament for the first time in 14 years this afternoon. They'll play Louisville at 1:30. You can watch the game on the TNT network. There's also an official watch party at Yuengling Drafthouse on 30th Street next to Busch Gardens in Tampa. I'm Craig Kopp, WUSF 89.7 News.
On the Bay Blend podcast, we take you to places in the greater Tampa Bay region you might not know about, like when I saw a big tree house at Bonnet Springs Park in Lakeland. Are you guys renting that out? Could I,
We do rent that out. If you want to have your birthday party there, you can absolutely.
Oh, no, I meant to live, because that's about as big as my apartment. I'm Sky LeBron, and join me every weekday morning on the Bay Blend for your quick hit of the news, culture, and events. That's the Bay Blend, wherever you listen to your podcasts, or at WUSF.org.
This is Florida Matters live and local, sponsored by Badawi Law and broadcasting from the Doctors Lorraine Rubis and Neil Frankel studio at WSF in Tampa. I'm Matthew Petty. Well, starting next year, you may be required to present proof of citizenship to vote. That's because of Florida House Bill 991. Last week, it passed in both the House and Senate. It would make citizens have to show documents like a birth certificate or passport to be eligible to cast their vote. The bill now awaits Governor Ron DeSantis' signature. Supporters like Senate President Alberton of Wauchula argued it's needed to prevent fraud in elections.
We feel good about the bill we passed. Ultimately, all we're really seeking is wanting to make sure that the elections process in Florida is as pristine as possible.
But others think this bill will open the door to discrimination. Here's Representative Anna Eskamani of Orlando debating the bill back in February.
I feel like this bill is going to impact U.S. citizens more than non-citizens, because non-citizens cannot vote, but the requirements that you are establishing under the guise of election security will actually create more barriers for people that are eligible to vote, but don't always have the perfect documentation that's outlined, might not have updated a real ID or have a birth certificate from a different state. I mean, there's all these nuances.
All right, so the bill is expected to be signed by the governor, and joining us to talk more about it is Andrew Garber. He's counsel on Brennan Center for Justice's Voting Rights team. Also with us, Amy Keith, Executive Director of Common Cause Florida. I want to hear from you as well. What do you think of the new voter laws? Do you think it addresses a problem or creates one? Let us know. The number is 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. To call and join the conversation, you can also send us an email, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Amy, thank you so much for being with us. And let me start with you. What is in this bill?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So basically, what this bill will do is it will, once you register to vote or you change your voter registration, or during the list maintenance process when they are looking to kind of clean the voter rolls, the Department of State, the supervisors of elections, are going to run your data through the DHS&B, the Department of Motor Vehicles database, and see if they have evidence on file for you that you are a citizen. And if that database doesn't have enough evidence on file for you, you're going to get a notice in the mail and you're going to have 30 days to respond to submit specific documents, providing the evidence that they're looking for. And if you don't, you're going to get kicked off the voter rolls, or your ballot's not going to be counted.
And what documents do you need? What sort of evidence do you need to provide proof of citizenship?
So we're looking at things like a passport, which can be very expensive to obtain. We're looking at a birth certificate, an original or certified copy of your birth certificate, which many Floridians don't have. And some people, as we heard, even on the floor of the Florida House, some people can't obtain it because they were not born in a hospital. And we also know that it's, naturalization certificates. But if you have changed your name, if you've been married or divorced, then you're also going to have to present documents that kind of link your current name to the name on your birth certificate or your naturalization certificates. And the bill does not actually even specify what documents might be accepted for that proof of name change.
So,
and we know that
there could be some issues if you change your name when you get married, for example. That's one of the concerns I think I've read about.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a higher burden on women who are more likely to have changed their name due to marriage or divorce. And this would be an additional documentation burden on those individuals.
If you're just joining us on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're talking about a new bill which will introduce the need to prove your citizenship when you go to vote in Florida. I want to hear from you as well. The number's 813-755-6562. What do you think about this new voter law? Is it making things more secure when it comes to elections? Is it potentially creating a problem that doesn't already exist? 813-755-6562 is the number. You can also email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Well, Andrew Garber, counsel on Brennan Center's Brennan Center for Justice voting rights team. What can people do if they don't have the documents they need?
Well, thank you for having me on, Matthew. Really glad to be able to join you today. As Amy laid out, this bill would impose a lot of burdens on voters in Florida, particularly those who don't have a document like a passport or birth certificate. There are 21 million American citizens across the country who lack those documents. And I think it's worth noting as well that we know what the likely impacts are going to be, in addition to women who have changed their name, as Amy talked about. Older voters, voters with disabilities, voters who live in rural areas, student and younger voters are disproportionately likely to lack these documents, and in many cases, it's even harder for them to get them. Voters, I always encourage people to be thinking now about how you're going to vote in the next election. So if you believe you're registered, check your registration. If you've moved recently, you're not sure you're on the rolls, now is the time to do it. Now is the time to think about how you want to vote. What are the options available to you this year, rather than wait until the day or the week of the election? I know it feels like it's a long time away, but there are also primaries coming up. Being on top of that, understanding what you need is a really great step voters can take, and they can take now to secure their vote this year.
Here's another group of people we should mention too. What about trans folks who may have a license with a name that's different from their birth certificates, perhaps? What would they do?
Well, in that case, it seems like, as Amy mentioned, they're going to need to have some sort of documentation indicating their name change. That's another thing. If you that applies to you, I would encourage you to be thinking about and looking for now, but that can be a real burden. People may have gotten married or changed their name for any other number of reasons years or decades ago. To expect them to have those documents laying around ready for everyday use is pretty unrealistic for most people. And so this poses a potentially serious burden to them, and it can be something that, requires paying hundreds of dollars to get necessary underlying documentation, taking extra trips to the DMV or other government agencies. So those are voters who I think will really be impacted by this bill as well.
Let's go to the phones. We've got Barbara calling in from Tampa. Barbara, you are on the air.
Yes, I feel that this bill would hurt Floridians. There's no need for the bill to be passed because there was never really a problem in Florida with voter fraud on a big scale or any scale that I'm aware. People do not have a passport if they were born and raised in Florida or in the United States, and or a copy of your birth certificate. I knew, and if you only have 30 days, I had a problem where I needed my birth certificate, and I was originally born in New York and now living in Florida for many years, and it took me more than 30 days to get a copy of my birth certificate through through the process of getting it, especially with all these layoffs and government shutdowns. It just makes things even harder to obtain these things. I think the real fraud is them making you prove that you're a citizen. If you have a valid driver's license, you've already went through this.
Right.
So why are you doing it again?
Barbara, thank you so much for the call. And if you want to join the conversation, the number is 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. Talking about Florida's new law, which I believe kicks in after the upcoming primary election, but still, and in fact after the election this year, but still it would require folks to have voter ID January 1st. Yeah, January 1st next year is when it kicks in. It requires people to have, not voter ID, I should say, proof of citizenship in order to vote. Want to hear from you, 813-755-6562. You can also send us an email, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Let's just hear a little bit more sound. This is Representative Anna Eskamani again, along with others against the bill. She says this bill would disenfranchise students trying to exercise their rights. Let's listen to that.
Students are the future of this state, and we should give them a clear path to engage politically. And time again, you see efforts to make it harder for students to engage. And I can only assume it's because we don't want students to engage. And if that's not the case, then we need to make sure there's a clear pathway for eligible students to have a path to vote.
All right, we'll get to that in a moment. Let me just go back to the phones. Kevin is calling in from Tampa. Kevin, you are on the air. Kevin, you're on the air. Go for it.
Hello?
Yep, hello.
You got my name's not Kevin. My name's Darnell.
Darnell, my apologies, Darnell. I got my notes wrong here. But Darnell, you're on the air. What are you thinking?
Well, because I work in social work, and one of the things that we see, everybody's talking about different demographics, but what about the homeless? So a lot of times the homeless cannot get the documents they need. So as people in social service, we have to help them with those resources. So I would like people to consider the impact on many of the transients, many of the homeless, even if they're trying to get their life together, they're trying to put things together, they may have a difficult time. It's a barrier getting those things they need. I just want people to be aware of that demographic also gets impacted. And there are places that they can go to get this assistance. But if they don't know about it, then obviously they can't get it. But I think more emphasis needs to be placed on transit population and the homeless, because that's increasing in Florida here.
Yeah, that's a good point. Darnell, thank you so much for your call. Amy, we've just got a few seconds before we go to break. I wonder if I could ask you both, Amy and Andrew, to stay on with us for a few more moments to talk about this, because we've got some more calls coming in. But Amy, in the next 30 seconds or so before we go to a break, what about folks like homeless folks who may have a harder time getting access to those documents?
Yeah, so one thing I want to make super clear in this bill is that this bill is going to have much less likely to impact people who have a valid Florida driver's license or a non-driver ID from the Florida DHS&B. And it's important for Floridians to know that if you have one of those documents, you are much less likely to be impacted by this bill. So students and people who are homeless, they are exactly who this bill is going after, because they are less likely to have that driver's license because it's so hard for them to obtain the documents.
Yeah.
And the cost of those documents.
Indeed, yeah, lots of hurdles there. Well, Amy Keith, Executive Director of Common Cause Florida, and Andrew Garber, Counsel at the Brennan Center for Justice Voting Rights team. Do stay with us if you could. We'll get a few more questions in from callers here on Florida Matters Live and Local in just a moment.
The Sarasota Fine Art Show by Hotworks is this weekend outdoors at Sarasota Art Museum. Discover original art by professional artists from around the country. Saturday 10 to 5, Sunday 10 to 4. Admission is free. Details at hotworks.org.
Start the new year with clarity. Your $20 monthly gift strengthens fact-based reporting right here in West Central Florida and keeps trusted news accessible to everyone. In a year when our community needs reliable information more than ever, you can help lead the way. Begin your new year as a new member at WUSF.org, and thank you.
Have a quick jazz break with the Jeremy Carter Group. Discover this and more at WUSFjazz.org.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. We're talking with Andrew Garber with the Brennan Center for Justice and Amy Keith with Common Cause Florida about voting rights. Florida just passed its own version of a bill that would require people to show proof of citizenship before they vote. That kicks in next year, so January 1st, 2027. There's obviously debate happening in Washington about a federal version of this bill, the SAVE Act, as well. Want to hear from you as well. 813-755-6562 is the number to call. Let's go to the phones, too. We've got Kevin calling in from Tampa. Kevin, you're on the air.
Hi, good afternoon.
Sure.
I was calling because I just wanted to note that it's the law would affect rural areas, I think, more strongly than urban areas, because it's, if you need those documents and need them replaced, if you live like in Miami or Orlando or the Tampa Bay area, you probably have a few options of where to go depending on where you're located. There's more offices open. Mm-hmm. If you live in a rural area, there may be only one location where you can get to access or request like a new copy of some of that information. So I just feel like that, you know, in some ways this may be impacting rural voters more than I think they may even the legislators may be intending to. Like
Right.
I think this may have be easier to actually replace these documents if you lived in say, Tampa,
Sure.
than if you did, say, in the Big Bend area.
Yeah, okay, Kevin, thank you for your call. What about that, Amy Keith? Is that something you're thinking about too?
With rural voters, yes. As I said, you know, this bill really is, it was called a poll tax during the debate in the legislature, and that's true. Anybody who struggles to afford documents, anybody who struggles to get access to an office where they can get the documents. In some cases, people were born in a rural area in another part of the country, and they would have to get that birth certificate from there. So absolutely, any voter who struggles to access documents because of cost, because of distance, and they're in a rural area, because of the hours that an office are open and the hours that they work, students who are from another state, all of these voters are truly at risk of not being able to vote in the state of Florida starting in January 2027, purely, not because they're not eligible, but purely because they can't access a document due to cost or other barriers. And the bill provides no out for those individuals.
Yeah. Talking about the need to provide proof of citizenship when you vote, what do you think about this? Is this a helpful voting requirement? 813-755-6562. Is it tightening up a potential loophole in our voting security? The number again, 813-755-6562. Let's go to the phones again. I think we've got Roxanne calling in from Largo. Roxanne, you're on the air.
Hey, so 16 years higher ed administration, and I have, one, to the point that was just made, most of the students in my experience that are out-of-state students tend to vote in their locality using their parents' address, since that's our primary residence of record.
Sure.
They would do mail-in voting. And then the other comment that was made regarding driver's licenses, we did a mostly international student population at the school I worked at for about 8 years, and all of them went to the DMV and got driver's licenses. I know certainly they probably didn't register them to vote when they got the license, but that doesn't necessarily mean that using that license, they couldn't register after the fact, to the best of my knowledge. I'm certainly open to being corrected on that. So I just want us to be on the same page with that. And my question for your panel is, has anybody ever considered offering to people who have low-income struggles, has anyone offered free driver's licenses or all of that to them because I know that in some of the nonprofit communities I've worked in, that is definitively something that will disenfranchise them. But I've never heard anybody put that forward as an option for some of their benefits packages.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you so much for that call and for those insights, Roxanne. I know there are some organizations that do work pretty hard to help people who may be without a home presently to get access to documents and IDs and that sort of thing. So it is some work that is happening in parts of the nonprofit community. But Andrew Garber with the Brenton Center for Justice, what about that notion of students getting driver's licenses or being able to get driver's licenses? I mean, do you think this is maybe not as much of a hurdle as it could be presented as?
Yeah, thank you for that question. There are a lot of checks in place to make sure that only eligible American citizens are voting in our election. And let me just give you one big one. When you fill out the voter registration form, it says on there, only citizens can vote, and it's a criminal penalty to register to vote as a non-citizen. That's a huge deterrent. Are you going to take the risk of being prosecuted, potential jail time, being deported if you're here on a visa to be able to cast one ballot? The risk reward just doesn't add up. Like, it's extremely rare, and we've seen over and over when states investigate this that there are virtually no non-citizens in the rolls. To give you an example, Utah did a big investigation last year. There's around 1.7 million registered voters in Utah. They found literally one non-citizen on the rolls, and I don't believe there was evidence that person had voted. And so, sometimes we hear about potential loopholes like this, but the reality is there are a lot of checks in place to make sure that that's not happening. And we have really just so much evidence to show that it is not. You asked the second question about free IDs. I think that's sort of the unicorn when it comes to these questions. It would be really great if people could get free IDs and solve this problem, but it's a lot harder than it might sound at first. Do you need to get underlying documents? Do you have a printer? A lot of lower income voters and voters from other communities don't. Can you get to the DMV? Do you have transportation? Do you have time to take off work, someone to take care of your kids or a sick relative? And so really the idea of, giving free IDs is a really enticing one, but there are a lot of hurdles that stand in the way and a lot of costs that can be really significant to some people to get that ID, even if in theory they don't have to pay for it up front.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the phones again. I've got Nathaniel calling in. I believe, Nathaniel, you are on the air.
Yeah, hi. And actually, this is exactly the kind of point I'd like to make, because what we really need in the state is a law that says if you're going to create a law, you need to first prove the points and the facts to the law from which you're trying to create, that you're trying, the problem you're trying to solve. So in this case, obviously, they would have to prove that we have voter fraud in the state of Florida. Guess what? They're not going to be able to do that. Would save us a lot of time that these guys obviously need, because they can't get anything done under normal order. Also, one quick point. If they do discover that we have voter fraud in the state, let's remember, please, that we've had single-party control for nearly 30 years.
Sure.
Have a good day.
Thank you for your call, Nathaniel. Well, let me put that to you, Amy. What about that? Should there be some more checks and balances on how these laws are being passed?
I think it's an excellent point because, when asked if there was any evidence or if this was fixing any problem, the sponsors of this bill said Florida has the gold standard of election administration. Even the governor of Florida has said that. They could not cite, cases. They had like anecdotal accounts of cases of somebody maybe registering but not even voting. There was no evidence. They are not solving a problem that actually exists. This is a waste of time and money for the people of Florida. It's a waste of time and money for tax dollars. There is no evidence of this. That's not the purpose of this bill. The purpose of this bill is to remove people that they don't want holding them accountable. There's a reason why this is about costs of getting documents. And the very people most affected by Florida's affordability crisis are the people impacted by this bill. And I just don't think our elected officials want to be held accountable by that community.
We're going to have to leave the conversation there, but I want to thank you both for your insights. Amy Keith, Executive Director of Common Cause Florida, and Andrew Garber, Counsel at the Brennan Center for Justice Voting Rights Team. Thank you, Andrew and Amy. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, coming up, we're going to talk about another bill recently passed, the bill to designate certain groups as domestic terrorist organizations, and we'll also talk about the Florida Line Worker Rodeo. Perhaps you've heard about it. It's a slightly different rodeo, but we'll talk about that as well. That's when Florida Matters Live and Local continues.
Listener support powers WUSF. Funding also comes from the Elizabeth Moore Sarasota Open, where professional tennis players come from around the world to compete. April 5th through 12th at IMG Academy. Tickets at sarasotaopen.com. Badawi Law, offering legal services in personal injury, immigration, and auto accidents, with offices in Tampa, Florida. Office information and practice details at badawilaw.com or learn more on Instagram at Badawi Law.
Hi, I'm Mark Schreiner, WUSF's Assistant News Director. I've been doing this job for a long time because I love it. I love telling you about what's going on around the Tampa Bay area, why it's important to you, and what you can expect to happen next. Telling the news is never boring, for better or worse, and I'm glad I get to do it with this group of journalists and for such a great audience. Thanks for listening.
Welcome back to Florida Matters, live and local. I'm Matthew Petty. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis could soon have the power to designate groups as domestic terrorist organizations. That's the gist of House Bill 1471. It's passed both chambers now. It just needs a signature from the governor, I should say. Schools tied to organizations which get that terrorist label also lose state tuition vouchers, and students supporting them will be expelled. Of course, there's pushback from Democratic lawmakers who voted against the bill, and civil liberties organizations as well. To help sort through what this bill would do, what supporters and opponents are saying, here's Liv Caputo, reporter who covers immigration for the Florida Phoenix. And if you've got some questions about what this all means for free speech or security in Florida, give us a call, 813-755-6562. You can also email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Liv, thanks so much for being with us. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks so much. I appreciate it as well.
So this bill is a bit complicated. What exactly would it do?
Yeah, it is complicated. There's a lot of things it would do. It's pretty wide ranging. I would say there's a few main points, though, to really focus on here. First of all, it would allow the top state officials to designate domestic terrorist organizations. Basically, it would be the chief domestic security officer, which in Florida would be FDLE's Commissioner Mark Glass, to designate a group as a terrorist organization, submit that in writing to the governor and the cabinet. They could then approve it or deny it. Mm-hmm. And then going from there, that's one section. The other section would say no courts in Florida can enforce or approve Sharia law. There's also a provision that would pull all school voucher funding or state-sponsored funding from schools with ties to terrorist organizations. And another provision, I hope I'm not missing any, would essentially expel any students who, quote, promote a terrorist organization.
Okay, so what do we know, Liv, about the criteria for designating a group a terrorist organization? How does that decision get made?
It gets made basically by the commissioner, Mark Glass, so a group that is committing, quote, extra legal violence, promoting it, partaking in it. Anyone who is really supporting some sort of, quote, terrorist activity, that would be, and they're working together to do it. There doesn't need to be convictions. That's an important point to note. There just needs to be maybe a concerted effort would be the best way to put it, mm-hmm. to really break the law and to cause terror in the state.
If you're just joining us on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're talking with Liv Caputo, reporter with the Florida Phoenix, talking about a new bill which allows Florida to designate groups as domestic terrorist organizations. Wondering what you think about this. Does it make you feel safer? Are you worried about civil rights being infringed? Give us a call, 813-755-6562 to join the conversation. You can also email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. So can you kind of walk us back a little bit, Liv, to where this started? Because 3 years ago, Governor DeSantis deactivated a couple of chapters of Students for Justice in Palestine. So why did that happen, and what's the connection to what we're seeing now happening in the legislature?
That's a good question. So the state has, especially under Governor DeSantis, has really taken a huge push towards conservative Republican values and ideals in higher education institutions. So yes, he did deactivate those two Students of Justice for Palestine groups in Florida. He also, though, I think another point to make as well that's related to this would be the fact that school voucher funding for Islamic schools is something that Republicans have kind of been trying to claw back for many years now. Just in November, actually, we saw the Attorney General criticize two Islamic schools here that had voucher funding and said they were promoting Sharia law. They shouldn't be funded. They shouldn't have state tax dollars. They wanted to kind of pull all funding from these two schools. And then all of a sudden, we see a few months later, we see this bill roll around. And it kind of captures both entities of, okay, we need quote unquote order on college campuses. There's that one provision. Also, no voucher funding for schools tied to terrorism or terrorists. They had said for one of those Islamic schools based in Tampa, actually, that the principal was related to the one of the founders of the U.S. Muslim Brotherhood. That's kind of the connection there.
What are we hearing from the schools, if anything?
We're not hearing too much from the schools. They do say we're not promoting Sharia law, we're not promoting terrorism. They've kind of kept to themselves, honestly. This whole thing came out, it was in November, we're now in March. We haven't really seen anything from the DeSantis administration or from these schools to quote unquote, straight up pull all these funding from either of these two Tampa schools. But we saw the movement, we saw the bill. The bill's now been passed. If the governor signs it, which he most likely will, his office actually helped draft it, then it will go into effect July 1st. That's when we could probably start to see some more state action, some more conflict between the two entities.
What are we hearing then from civil liberties groups who've been pushing back at this bill?
Yeah, they're not very happy. They're saying this is infringing on First Amendment rights, freedom of religion. They're saying this is unfairly targeting one religion. They're saying that this is, quote, un-American. They're saying to target and say, hey, we're just focusing on Sharia law. We're just focusing on Islam. They're saying that's entirely illegal. It's unconstitutional. We had Democratic lawmakers actually compare this bill to the Ku Klux Klan. So to say it's not going well would be putting it mildly.
Now, let me ask you about another bill connected to House Bill 1471. 1473, what exactly does this do? Because there's also some concerns been raised about this too.
Yeah, this bill is more about public records. And so that basically means for people who aren't entirely aware of what can the public see? What can the public pull and say, okay, our lawmakers or our officials were doing something on a piece of paper, email, text. We're legally allowed to pull it and see it because it's public record. Florida has pretty open public record laws. This would create an exemption. And basically, you wouldn't be able to see certain details that the chief of domestic security has submitted to the governor and cabinet. So what does that mean? Again, the chief of domestic security would say, hey, I want this group designated as a domestic terrorist organization. He would write up why. He would submit that to the governor and cabinet. It's not entirely clear which portions would be exempt, but it's more certain, quote, sensitive information that may be included in that report that could threaten security to Floridians, maybe to Americans as a whole. Those portions would not be available to be seen by the public.
So, these bills heading to Governor DeSantis' desk, they're, as you say, probably going to get signed. Where do you see the argument going, once they're signed into law, if and when they're signed by Governor DeSantis?
I think we're going to see more of an extension of the Islamic argument, of the religious argument, of the education argument. We've had education debates now really rise to the top in terms of debates over the past few years under the governor. We're going to see people saying, this is going too far. You're trying to expel these students for promoting a terrorist organization. That term promoting might be a little too vague for them. They're worried maybe someone could get expelled for supporting Students of Justice for Palestine. And there's some concerns that there may be wrongful expulsions. There are concerns that there's going to be targeting of specifically Islamic students or Islamic schools. I think to answer your question in short, it's going to be a debate about schools. It's going to be a debate about religion.
Yeah, and it could be litigated in the courts too.
Oh, yeah.
Liv Caputo covers immigration for the Florida Phoenix. Liv, thank you so much for sharing some of your reporting and your insights with us.
Of course, thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, let's turn now to something a little bit different. There's a rodeo that's just happened. It's a rodeo of a different sort, though. This is, in fact, a linesman's rodeo. It's rodeo season, of course, and among the athletes wrangling beasts, this is Florida linemen we're talking about. So there's a little bit of sound there from the most recent rodeo. Imagine a field with rows of utility poles, line workers in full gear racing to the top to simulate rescues and repairs. A couple of weekends ago, linemen from Tampa Bay did well at the Florida Linemen's Rodeo. They're advancing to the International Linemen's Rodeo happening in Kansas this fall. And joining us now to talk more about their experience, we've got some Duke Energy linemen with us. Alex Gillen is with us, also Adam Sass and Matt Richardson. Matt, welcome back to the program. Listeners may remember when you talked to us about going up north to help folks during those blizzards earlier this year. And also, congratulations on advancing to the International Linemen's Rodeo, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Okay, so third place in Florida, how does that feel? I imagine there's some pretty stiff competition.
It feels really good. We're very excited to advance to international. We've been trying to compete for that for years.
What do you actually do? Because, I mean, it's a little bit hard to get a sense from the little audio clip I played. It makes more sense if you see it on a video, but how does this competition break down for people who are watching?
Oh, there's 4 different events. 2 are mystery, so we can just practice random things to help us on that. And then 2 are known. One of them is a hurt man climb where we go work as a team and save a dummy at the top of the pole. And then the other one is a speed climb where we have to climb to the top of the pole, put a raw egg in our mouth, and climb down without breaking.
Wait a minute. Put a raw egg in your mouth, like a unbroken raw egg?
Yep, correct. Unbroken raw egg, and you got to climb down and not break it. If you break it, that's quite a bit of a gig, and we wouldn't be advancing.
You end up with egg on your face, literally.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, were you successful with that? Did anyone crack an egg on their climb?
No, we were very successful with that one.
And then, I mean, what does that actually? How does that help you as a lineman? There's no situation where you'd be, unless you're maybe rescuing some kind of bird situation, like an eagle or something potentially. But what kind of skill are you developing by climbing up and down a pole with a raw egg in your mouth?
That's just climbing smooth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you cut out and your hook comes out and you hit against the pole, then you'll break the egg. So it just kind of teaches us to climb smooth, transition smooth, and, get the job done.
It's the lineman's rodeo. Of course, that's the name of it. But are there women competing as well?
Yes, there's women.
And how do they do?
I'm not sure how they placed. But yeah, we have the rodeo across all different states as well. So Carolinas and Midwest and all that. So
okay,
locally in Florida, I'm not sure.
And what about the Kansas, the International Linemen's Rodeo in Kansas? So you up against folks from other countries as well? I mean, I guess that's in the title, so that would make sense.
Yeah, last year me and Alex actually went. He was an apprentice there.
Mm-hmm.
There was like 300 teams from all around different countries around the U.S. too. I think there was a couple all women's teams that were there as well. So it's pretty neat to see all the different people and cultures from around everywhere. We all do the same thing, just in different places, but to all be in one place is pretty neat.
Are there certain countries which have better, say, climbing skills than others, or are they they're better at certain aspects of the competition?
I guess you could say that sometimes. I mean, a lot of the guys that place really well, they practice a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And, each area may have an expertise in something. Some guys, do more hands-on work, while some guys do a lot of stick work. So some events that have stick work, they'll do better at that than guys that don't normally do it all the time. So
okay, what is stick work?
That's basically where you're applying and doing the work at the end of like a 6-foot or 8-foot stick. So your hands aren't actually touching the wire or the material. You're lower on the pole and using sticks to maneuver everything. So it's a little different than when you're putting your hands on it.
Okay, so it's like a giant pair of chopsticks, essentially?
Sure.
That's where the mystery events come in. So you can practice for different things, but you practice by putting your hands on the wire, and then you show up, and the mystery event is stick work. And that's kind of a little curveball that they can throw at you.
And what's the weather like in Kansas in October? A little chilly, potentially?
Cold.
Yeah,
Usually rainy as well.
Okay. Well, at least you've had some practice, I suppose, helping out with those blizzards up north. So that's probably going to help you out there.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, that's all the time we've got. But I want to thank you all and congratulations in making it to the next round of the International Rodeo. Duke Energy linemen Alex Gillen, Matt Richardson, and Adam Sass. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Well, stay with us for more on Florida Matters Live and Local. We're going to talk about the 100th anniversary of the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Tampa Bay. That's when we come back.
Funding for WUSF comes from listeners like you, and also Tampa Bay Solar, with a portfolio of commercial, residential, and special projects dedicated to providing long-term value and sustainability with solar while contributing to Florida's transition to clean, renewable energy. Learn more at tampabaysolar.com. Travel 100 years back in time to see through the lens of one of the most iconic photographers of the American West. Edward S. Curtis, photographer of his time, now showing at the James Museum in downtown St. Pete. More info at thejamesmuseum.org.
I'm Indira Lakshmanan. President Trump wants to remove Cuba's president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, from power.
Cuba right now is in very bad shape. They're talking to Marco, and we'll be doing something with Cuba very soon.
This as the island nation suffers from power blackouts due to a U.S. oil embargo. Next time on Here and Now.
Join us tomorrow afternoon from 1 to 3 on WUSF 89.7.
Florida's big. From the Panhandle to the Keys, no two communities are alike. No matter what happens, Your Florida is here to break down how state government can impact you the most. Like Pamela Rose in Lauderhill, who is struggling to pay high condo assessments.
My concern is that we look like we're going to lose our property, and I'm crying.
Tune in to WUSF or visit online at wusf.org/yourflorida.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. It's the 100th anniversary of the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Tampa Bay. It all started with the Rotary Club of Tampa. In 1926, they established the West Tampa Boys Club to serve the community and provide a third space for kids. Lots happened since then, of course, and joining us to talk about their centennial and everything that they've accomplished so far, Chief Marketing Officer Cassandra Thomas. Cassandra, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
And Cassie Cackley, the Chief Development Officer for the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Tampa Bay. Cassie, thank you as well.
Thank you.
And if you've got some questions about the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Tampa Bay, maybe you're an alumnus of the Boys and Girls Club, you're maybe experienced some of the things they've offered the Tampa Bay community, give us a call, 813-755-6562. Maybe you want to get involved as well. 813-755-6562 is the number to call. You can also email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. All right, so Cassandra, you represent the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Tampa Bay. How many counties or cities does that include?
So we were at 3 counties, and most recently, if anybody's been following the news, we are now going to be at 4 counties. That's Hernando, Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco County.
So Pasco's the newest?
No, Hernando's actually the newest.
Okay. All right. So what does it take to set up a branch in a brand new county? How does that work?
So we really, it's really just about opportunity as well as need. We were fortunate enough that we saw that there was a need in Hernando County. There were no Boys and Girls Club services the past year or so, and we started talking with community members there. A lot of times it involves partnerships with the local schools. We really just sit down and hear opinions and voices, and then from there we work to see if we can get the funding solidified. Mm-hmm. And then a building always helps, of course, and we were lucky enough to partner with Parks and Rec in Hernando and Brooksville, and they had a facility that was not being used. So we plan to offer our programs and services this summer.
Oh, wow. Okay, so Cassie, who do you serve? What's the kind of target audience here?
We serve youth from kindergarten all the way to 24 years of age, so
Oh,
all the
wow.
way into young adulthood.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Do you have kids who've started out and gone all the way through to 24?
We do, yes. We have students that we've served, all the way through their development in life that we're fortunate to work with. A lot of siblings, a lot of family members that we've served, and it all culminates into our amazing club alumni.
And do they stick around to help as mentors? Like, do you get some of that kind of giving back once they've gone, once they've turned 24 and they can't, or 25, I suppose, and they can't be part of the club anymore?
We do, yes. That's our hope, is that they continue to be a part. Once a club member, always a club member. And we have amazing staff members that actually grew up in the club and wanted to give back and give, through their lives, the opportunity to give to our current students that we're serving. So actually our president and CEO, Freddie Williams, he is a club alumni, and I would attribute the club to helping to save his life as well.
Wow, okay. So you must have heard quite a lot of stories like that in your time with the club, I imagine.
We do, yes. And I'm actually with my colleague Cassandra, who is a club alumni herself, too. And we've got a lot of amazing youth we've been fortunate to work with and hear their stories and be able to help and serve in a lot of different ways.
So did you get started in a club here in Tampa Bay, or was it somewhere else?
No, it was actually somewhere else. I grew up in California. So my mom put me in a Boys and Girls Club. I was a typical latchkey kid, single family home. My mom wanted to make sure I had a space to go after school and during the summertime. So I actually used to take a city bus every day. I would drop me off right in front of the clubhouse. And I spent most of my time in the library. I was an avid reader. But it was just such a great space to make friends. It was a great space to learn. It was a great space to have access to resources that I didn't have at home. So I loved it.
If you're just joining us on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're talking about the 100th anniversary of the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Tampa Bay. With us is Chief Marketing Officer Cassandra Thomas and Cassie Cackley, who is the Chief Development Officer. And if you've got questions about the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Tampa Bay, give us a call, 813-755-6562, or email floridamatters@wusf.org. So, Cassandra, what does it mean to be celebrating 100 years here in Tampa Bay?
Oh my gosh, it's super special. We are so proud to be Florida's very first Boys and Girls Club. So it started right here in Tampa Bay. And 100 years is such a huge milestone. So many nonprofits don't reach that age-wise. So for us to be able to say that we have been a part of the community, a part of the fabric of various counties for so long and impacting thousands of young people over a centennial is just fantastic. So for us, we really wanted to take this opportunity this year to not just honor our legacy and how far we've come, but also celebrate where we're going. And the future. And a big part of that does include expansion. It does include some really fun, innovative projects. Cassie mentioned, serving up to age 24. That's really kind of unheard of with Boys and Girls Clubs historically. We've always typically stopped at 18, but we recognize the need, especially as our teens.
So is that just a Tampa Bay thing?
It's not just a Tampa Bay thing right now, but we were one of the first to start that extended age because we recognize the support. As kids graduate high school, sometimes they don't know what direction they want to go in, whether it's college or career, and we wanted to make sure that we were there to provide those resources.
How did it get so it started out of the Rotary Club? How did it turn into what it is now?
Oh, gosh. Really, that's thanks to just community involvement. It started as just one clubhouse in West Tampa. And, of course, we started as Boys Club. We were lucky enough to include girls later on down the line. But, I think parents, schools, they saw the impact that we were having on kids through the programs and the services that we provided. And from there, it just kind of exploded. Other neighborhoods, other counties saw what was happening, and they said, hey, we want a boys club, Boys and Girls Club later on in our community as well. And from there, it just kind of grew.
And how do you set yourselves apart? What sets the Boys and Girls Club apart from, say, other activities after school that a school might be offering?
Yes, great question. And it really comes down to the amazing programs that we run on a daily basis and the life-saving programs that we're running that are helping thousands and thousands of youth across our region. We've got some great club locations that are sprinkled throughout the region, too, that are accessible to families and children that need access. And then we've got programs such as workforce development, feeding services as well. We've got academic support for the families and numerous different ways that we can help and ensure that any child has access to things that they need for their full development as they're growing up.
When you say life-saving, what do you mean by that?
I mean, just access to programs that they otherwise wouldn't due to lack of resources oftentimes or lack of exposure. And these are programs that will set kids up for life to ensure that they have what they need to be successful and to become the great future leaders that they're going to become. So without these programs, they would never have had those opportunities for themselves to think and dream bigger for who they will grow up to become.
So as the development officer, are you looking at some other counties and thinking we could get even bigger?
Oh, you never know what's on the horizon. We are here for kids. So wherever that journey may lead us down the road, we'll see where the opportunities lie. But we're here to ensure that every child has access to a club, regardless of location, regardless of, where they may be, that they have access to programs that we offer are critically important for them. So we want to make sure we have what we need in place to continue to thrive and grow and help youth across the region.
Cassandra, we've talked about this a little bit on our program and other contexts, but third spaces can be a struggle to find even for adults. Mm-hmm. So what do you offer for kids to enjoy outside school or workplace or just kind of going home? As you say, if you're a latchkey kid, you may not have that access or that ability to do that. So it's important to have these spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. So while all of our facilities look very different, they all offer really incredible things, whether it's a digital lab with high-tech computers or a gymnasium with sporting equipment. We have tutors on site to help with homework assistance or literacy, which is really huge. So we are like an all-in-one hub. That's kind of like how I like to think of it. We really offer the full gamut of services for a young person. If they're coming to our club and they're hungry, we got it covered. If they're coming to our club and they need help with their homework, we've got you covered. If they're coming to our club and they need emotional wellness support, we've got you covered. We have some incredible staff in place that are ready to really help our kids be future ready in every sense of the word.
And are you finding the demand for things like food assistance, is that growing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we know that food insecurity definitely impacts various areas throughout the region, and we have a great partnership with Feeding Tampa Bay. So a lot of our meal and snack services come in through partnership with them. Last year, we served close to 550,000 meals and snacks in our clubs, which is a huge number. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, during the summertime, we do like the full gamut. They get a snack, lunch. Some of our clubs serve hot dinners. We have some sites that are fully equipped with commercial kitchens, so we're able to provide that through partnerships.
Yeah. So as far as the celebrating 100 years, are you throwing a big party at some point this year? What's happening?
We are having a year-long celebration and hope to, have everybody involved in different capacities with our celebration. So we do. We have events throughout the course of the year, a lot of excitement, different community partnerships taking place throughout the year. It all culminates with, we have an event about once a month at this point, and different ways to engage and help us celebrate too. And with our alumni too, and our alumni base, really honoring and celebrating our historical past and looking into how we can launch and sustain for the next 100 years is our hope.
And just finally, Cassandra, is there a way for people to get involved? Like, are there volunteer opportunities?
Of course. We have opportunities coming out of our ears. So we're always looking for ways to engage our community members, whether you're an alumni, whether you're a supporter, whether you come to our events, whether you want to come and get some hands-on engagement with our young people. You can visit our website at bgctampa.org, and we've got staff ready to help guide you along the way.
Well, we're going to leave the conversation there, but thank you both very much. We've been talking about the 100th anniversary of the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Tampa Bay. Cassandra Thomas is the Chief Marketing Officer. Cassandra, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And Cassie Cackley, Chief Development Officer. Cassie, thank you as well.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Well, coming up next time on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're talking tariffs. We'll hear from a local small business owner here in Tampa Bay about how tariffs are factored into the cost of doing business. You can join the conversation too. Give us a call, 813-755-6562. Leave a message there. Also email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org and join the conversation on Monday at noon. That's our show for today. Our executive producer is Grayson Doctor. Our producers are Amelie Horace and Quincy Walters. Our engineers are Jackson Harp, Gio Garvin, and Blake Bass. Jackson composed our theme music, and Malika Hollis handled the video today. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcast, watch on WSF's YouTube channel. I'm Matthew Petty. Thanks for listening and watching, and have a fantastic weekend.